Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of the Pink Ape. I'm your local resident silverback, Steve here, and today I'm coming to you with an exciting episode. I'm going to be talking about the Viper V4 Pro, how it compares to the Superstrike X2, and then I'm going to be talking about how the Viper V4 Pro compares to the Viper V3 Pro, in case you're thinking of getting a different iteration of a similar shape. And then I'm going to be talking about the difference between the black and white versions of the V4 Pro. I'll give you my recommendations. This isn't a total review of the mice. It's sort of my 1 month impression. I've been using each mouse for about a month, plus or minus a couple weeks. And I've put at least 12 hours into each mouse. And I want to talk a little bit about what I think, and we'll talk a little bit about the specs, but this is less about the specs and more about how these mice perform based on your preferences. Now, for reference, I have about 19.5 centimeter hands by 10.5 centimeter hands, so I'm about an average sized hand, right in the middle, maybe a little bit larger than average, but not by much, right? So I've always used mice of this size, and I've recently started using smaller mice too, as you can see in some of my other videos, but I've used mice about this size quite a bit. So let's just jump right into the Viper V4 Pro versus the Superstrike X2. There's been a lot of fuss over these two mice. Now, I'll turn them upside down so you can get a view here. When the Superstrike X2 first came out, there was a lot of hype that we didn't know it was going to come out. It kind of landed like a meteor or a comet. Nobody knew what Logitech was up to for a while, and then they dropped this mouse with new haptic system or whatever, the new types of clicks, innovation there. So they call it HITS, haptic inductive. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly how it works. I know it uses the Hall effect technology that's in this keyboard I have over here. And apparently what it allows you to do is reduce the actuation point. And this should theoretically improve your speed because the mouse doesn't have to travel as much before you activate a click in game. So I bought this mouse for $180, and I don't regret buying it, but I will say straight up front, you're not going to necessarily see a 20 millisecond increase like as advertised here unless you're already using a really old or outdated mouse. My average between 20 or 30 mice I've been testing the last year, my average is 160 milliseconds. And with the Superstrike set at an actuation point of 3, I average around 158 milliseconds. So, what am I seeing there? About a 4 plus 2, about a 6 millisecond increase. And this is kind of strange because actually when I set it to lower actuation points, I actually get slower. And for me, what I notice is it takes more effort and resistance from my nervous system to resist clicking, even after playing for a long time. In addition to psychologically, I like the feedback of a click. So the first thing I'll say about this mouse is if you're already a really good gamer, like you have a really good mouse and you've been playing for a while, you're not going to see 20 milliseconds increase in this if you measure it appropriately. You might get 5 to 6, but you will see a tightening of the range. So sometimes with other mice that have more pre-travel and higher actuation point, you're going to notice that you don't get within your ideal range as much, and this has a very narrow band. So what does that mean? If I click this 20 times, the chances of me being between 150 and 160 is greater than most other mice. That being said, you may have heard that this weighting on this mouse is off. Like you can even see kind of when I lift it. It's not a good angle, but you know, if I use this hand, that's what the mouse does when you lift it from the center. Well, the exact center is fine, but if I lift it over here, you can see it just, it's a little front heavy. So I actually like the front heaviness. It's strangely, because I would only use this mouse in tactical games, the front heaviness allows me to move this heavier mouse with less effort. So I actually prefer the way it's weighted. And when I do lift, I just use these two fingers. So my primary complaint about this mouse is not that it's weighted inappropriately, because for tactical games, I think because of its weight, the weight is appropriate. I'll tell you what my primary complaint is. But before I do that, I want to preface that I think this is a good mouse. I just don't think it's worth $180 right now. And I think that the innovation is a little underbaked. Not because of the changes they made to the mouse to implement the innovations. If you're not familiar, the word on the street is they had to cut a lot of corners in the mouse, and that's why it's weighted so funny in order to push it out to market, because they wanted to get the innovations out. The clicks. That's not my complaint though, and it feels like a pretty high quality mouse to me. Like it's definitely worth 150 or 160, but the $30 premium on this for the ancient scroll wheel, that's kind of stiff. And this one grip that I have with it, which is the two sides, so you can set your actuation point, and you can set, the formal word is you can set the rapid trigger. I'm not going to get too much into rapid trigger right now, but you can set the click haptics. So this is what creates the feedback in the mouse because it's magnetic. So if I increase or decrease the haptics, I'll feel like a more powerful click versus a less powerful click, to put it in click terms. So, you know, if you turn the mouse off and you set the haptics, or if you set the haptics to 0, you feel nothing, which is a really strange feeling. So you have your actuation point and your haptics. Your actuation point determines, again, how far you have to push this button down before it fires on the screen. And the haptics are the feedback. Now, here's my grip with this. The haptics feel nice, and they're strangely kind of cool. You know, they feel nice, but they're not consistent between sides. So a level 2 haptic on the right does not feel like a level 2 haptic on the left. And that irritates me because I only have incremental changes. It's not a gradient. And there is no configuration where the two feel the same. So if you have OCD and you want left and right click to feel similar, you know, for a mouse that costs this much and for an innovation, I would expect them to be dead even. And, you know, I can't totally complain because even in the Viper V4 Pro, they're not dead even in sound, but in sensation they are. I'll get to that. But they're not dead even, and they're off by a margin that's noticeable. And I don't know why that is. Like right now, this is set to 3 and it feels like 2, but it's still not the exact same. And I want it to be the same so bad. That just makes me wonder too, like if I set the actuation point for the same value on both sides, is that the same? Because the haptic feedback is not. So that's my biggest grip with this mouse. You know, I think everything else is forgivable. These skates, I have a glass mouse, so they're not too bad. They're not the greatest skates, but, you know, I'd give them a 6 out of 10. The innovation is great. Is it revolutionary? I don't think it's revolutionary. Is it innovative? Yes. I don't think this improves you more than other mice. Actually, I test lower on the Viper V4 Pro, and that's why I recommend it over this, all things being equal. The only reason I would recommend this over the Viper V4 Pro is if you like the shape more of the Superlight 2. Now, I never liked the Superlight 2 because I like to click in different areas. And with this, I can, but with the Superlight 2, it was exponentially more stiff up here than it was down here. And by up here, I just mean like around here. I don't like to always click in the same spot, and sometimes I don't. So that was my main grip with the Superlight 2 and why I never liked it. I didn't care too much for the shape either. I prefer this shape a little bit, but not too much more. And I'll get to that. But yeah, so, you know, if I give this mouse a rating without the price, I'd give this an 8.5. But with the price, I dropped this to a 7 out of 10. And for it to be a 9, I would raise this up to a 9 if the weight was, I know I said I don't mind the weight, but if the weight was better and the scroll wheel was improved and these two sides were consistent and the haptic feedback was improved in other ways as well, which I'll discuss in a sec, I would give this an almost 10. But I can't, because if I factor price into it and you're paying $180 and I give this a 9, that means when they do improve these, they can charge you $220. And I don't believe this haptic stuff is cool, but it doesn't reduce the latency compared to other newer mice that have no pre-travel and fast rebound time. I actually test faster on this in the OP1K. And I do thousands of speed tests, reaction tests, thousands. So, you know, I get an average of 160 milliseconds between all the mice I test. Then I see how good each mouse does relative to the average. And on average, you know, I'll do anywhere between 30 to 500 clicks. The thing is, you know, my test is subjective because a lot of my millisecond reaction time is going to depend on my leverage on the mouse, where I'm clicking. You know, someone who uses this is going to click in different spots. This is more consistent. I get more consistent, narrower band of milliseconds. So I understand the innovation can be very useful, especially for tactical games. And I hit shots sometimes on this, wondering, you know, could I have hit it on another mouse? But actually, when I got the Viper V4 Pro, it had the same thing, you know, just different sensations. Same, like I hit shots on this and I wonder if I could have done it on another mouse. So, you know, I give this a 9.5 and I'll tell you why. I'll give this a 7.5. Do I regret buying it? No, because I feel like I'm buying, you know, a piece of history. I am, after all, reviewing mice here on YouTube. So, and I do enjoy using the feedback, but for $180, if I'm going to recommend this to someone and they like both shapes, I can't recommend this until they improve it one iteration, because the innovation is half-baked, and it's not even because they cut corners. It's simply because these are not consistent. The scroll wheel, the side buttons, yes, but I don't really care too much about those. I'd still recommend it and give it like a 9. It's more just, you know, you have a new innovation. I don't really trust your numbers too much because they're inconsistent between the two clicks. And that's what it is. Everything else is forgivable to me. Oh, and also this doesn't improve my speed by 20 milliseconds. In fact, my average speed on the Viper V4 Pro is 140. Here, let me get you the exact number. $145 milliseconds. Compared to the Viper V3 Pro, I'm almost improving 20 milliseconds on this, but I'm not on this. And I'm telling you, it's because of the haptics. I want to feel a click, and I'm not getting that feedback. And what ends up happening is I get a lot of slower clicks because my body freezes. I feel like a freeze. It's like limp finger. And it happens even after I get adjusted to it. And if the actuation point is 1, it's even worse. It's almost like my hand is trying to resist clicking. And that resistance is greater than the benefit. So I don't know. You know, I'm also a very light clicker. I don't death grip the mouse. So I'm already pretty light. I like to breathe when I play and meditate. You know, I don't know what to say, but, you know, I'm getting like an 8 millisecond improvement with this, and I'm almost getting 15 milliseconds with this. Actually, almost 20 to be exact. So, which one do I recommend? Well, if you like both shapes, get the Viper V4 Pro. If you like this shape, you're going to want to get this one. I would definitely recommend this over the Superlight. This is a huge improvement over the Superlight, even with the weight. And the tracks, the Superlight to me was awful because of the clicks and how fast the gradient was from, you know, flexible and limber to stiff towards the back end. But yeah, that's my recommendation. I also like the positioning of the side buttons better on this than the Viper, but it's a small grip. So that's kind of what I would recommend here. There is one more thing I want to talk about with the Superstrike X2. If the haptic feedback is too strong, which I would prefer, but I can't get to, you do get this weird, like, nerve sensation in your fingers that kind of goes into the stem of your finger. I don't know what it is. I'm not a sensitive individual. I box without gloves on heavy bags. I have been hitting rice, toughening my hands for 20 years. I have probably deadened most of the nerves in my hand simply from the martial arts I did over the last 25 years. And when I touch this mouse and I put the haptic feedback up and I'm clicking and I'm playing with this thing, I get a really weird nerve block sensation. It feels like discomfort, numbness, and I don't like it, so I just lower it. It makes me a little numb. So something about, like, 2 things need to change with this mouse next year or sooner. You need to make the haptics feel more like a click, because the crispiness of the click cannot be understated. When your brain gets used to that feedback over 20 years, over 10 years, even someone just starting, there's something about that, you know, buoyant click, that crispy with a fast rebound, low pre-travel click, that, you know, yeah, I like to pull this out, and this is a different sensation that I'm also kind of getting addicted to, but, you know, it's not really the same. And, you know, maybe they should never be the same. Maybe variety and innovation and change is good, but at least make it so that I can have more haptic feedback than 2, because I can't use the 3 right now because it just sends vibrations straight into my fingers. Maybe change the sensation a little bit, play around with that, do some tests with people, consumers, do some sampling, marketing, research, figure it out. But if you can make the clicks consistent, fix the weight, you can ship us bad skates again. I don't care too much about that. But for $180, you really shouldn't. Fix the side buttons for 90% of people who complain about the mouse. And you might have like one of the best mice ever made, sans the shape, if you don't like it. I don't want to knock this down, though, because the innovation is excellent in it. And honestly, once you do use something like this, you kind of get addicted to it. You don't want to not use it. It's just not always going to be your preferred mouse to use. And if you're only going to have one mouse, then I don't recommend it necessarily, because I think this is going to radically change in the next couple of years. So if you get too used to this, even if you like this innovation, I would expect it to feel entirely different in subsequent iterations. And a lot of that will depend on if the pros use it. So I've talked quite a bit now, almost 20 minutes on why I prefer one mouse over the other. There is one more thing, actually, the scroll wheels. The scroll wheels on this, and the side buttons, of course. The side buttons on the Viper are better. You know, they're not too much better. Both of these mice are lacking in the side buttons. You know, if I have this mouse over here, you know, this is the U2 Mini by ATK. These side buttons are actually better on this mouse than they are on these. So they stick out more, they're easier, they're clickier, and they feel more solid. So the side buttons aren't really going to sway you in either way between these two. The scroll wheel, though, is super smooth on the Viper V4 Pro. And, you know, this is... I'm just going to run with this for a little bit, and I'll do the Viper V4 versus the Viper V3 in another video. But, yeah, you know, if you want to see them a little bit from the front, while I talk a little bit more about the scroll wheels, this scroll wheel is super smooth, but also notchy. Doesn't take a lot of effort. The bounce is great. You know, it's almost like the perfect scroll wheel for gaming. It doesn't have infinity scrolls, so it's not the best for work, but this scroll wheel honestly isn't too bad. I know there's a weird bug with it where if you drag and try to move something, it breaks. But, you know, it's not as good as this scroll wheel. It feels kind of heavy, and over time it can get a little tiring and taxing and a little annoying. But, you know, I would say this is like a 10 and this is like a 7 scroll wheel. But besides that, you know, there's the weight, of course, but 61 grams is heavy these days. Would I care, though, if everything else was consistent like I had said? Would I care? Probably not. I have a mic over here. I'm going to try to show you. You know, you can't even hear this click. I don't know if you can hear that. Side buttons. Good look. You can hear a lot of scratch with these mice feet. Now this one. Now I kind of was hard on the Superstrike X2. I'm going to be a little hard on the Viper V4 Pro now too. So this mouse, I do recommend it for 160 because now this is 180. So, you know, this is like the cheaper mouse, unfortunately. But for the price, you're getting a better mouse. You know, this has a new sensor that increases the battery life and gives you a smoother, more experience. I don't know how to describe it, but you can definitely feel it. It feels great. It has the Focus Pro 50K Gen 3 sensor. This has the Hero 2. The Hero 2 is 44 DPI, I believe. And this is 50 DPI. Who cares at that point? No, this is 54 grams. This is 49, or no, it's 61 grams, and this is around 49. And my first impressions, you know, here, I've been using these for way more than a week. So, you know, almost a month, both, if not longer. I forget how many weeks I've been using this, but it might have only been 3. This I've been using almost since the second week it was out. And like I said, the sensor on this is better because it gives you better battery life and you can feel a little bit better, more smoother experience. But listen to the clicks, right? That aluminum sounding click. It's different than the left. So here, you know, you have another issue, which is you're getting this aluminum ping. Both feel the same to click, but yet this one makes a different sound. So, you know, I said this is a haptic feedback 3, haptic feedback 2. Still don't feel the same, but this feels a little bit more than this. But if I go to 2 here, then it's going to feel entirely different and softer on the right side, which is annoying. This has an annoying thing too to it. So, you know, it's kind of like damned if you do and damned if you don't. But I would say this is far less annoying because usually you play with headphones and the sensation is the same. And for me, it's more about the sensation. Shape, I'm not going to get too much into shape, but both are fine for relaxed claw. This gives you a little more mobility. This gives you options to hold differently. You can get different leverage points. You can even hold this one sometimes when you're really tired, like this sideways. It has more options for grip than this. And I find that my hand, you know, gets less tired on this because it's not filling the whole thing up as much. Although this isn't too bad. You know, the shape really grew on me. So there you have it. The clear winner, you know, I'm improving. Ironically, I'm getting a 20 millisecond increase on this. The overall quality feels better. The weight's better. The side buttons are about the same on both. The scroll wheel is better here. The clicks feel better here. Although this is definitely a welcomed and new sensation. And I'm comparing the best to the best, right? But, you know, for $180, the inconsistency on the 2 sides, and I'm not the only one, there's more people on Reddit, by the way. But the clicks, you know, are better here. And the Viper, I'll talk a little bit about these clicks. The Viper V4 Pro clicks, they have a very low pre-travel, a very light, sparky click. It feels great. It's just, it has an aluminum ping on the right. And I have the black one here, and the black one doesn't have as much of that ping. And in another video, I'll compare black versus white. But for now, I've decided not to because this video is getting a little long. There's just so much to say. But yeah, this white one has that aluminum ping. The coating is great on both. I like the coating on this too. Some people think it's not that good. It hasn't turned yellow on me yet. Some people say it will. Same with this one. I have a Viper V3 Pro I've been using for a couple of years. Not a couple of years, but maybe a year and a half, I think. It hasn't turned yellow on me. So, long story short, you know, say price wasn't a thing. If you wanted a more versatile mouse that you could use across all your games, it has to be this one. You know, you're not relearning, you're not feeling weird sensations, you're not experimenting for $180. That's what this really is. It's a $180 experiment, and it doesn't really land. I'm sure maybe some people are noticing massive gains, you know, if they're using an ancient mouse or if they're using, you know, a mouse from 3 generations ago. But generally speaking, this feels like a complete product, and Viper's strategy in general of incremental improvements I think in the long run is a good idea, because if you take, see, I don't even know if you want to put haptic triggers on something like this. Like, I don't even know if haptic triggers are a thing really, other than maybe improving consistency and milliseconds by like 5 or 10. I do know that when you just take the pre-travel and reduce it, and you have a low actuation, but you still have like the ability to kind of preload with some crunchiness and some light travel, this actually does improve my time by 20 milliseconds. So that's my crazy conclusion, because what they advertise to do in this mouse is actually what is happening in this mouse, which I didn't expect, because when this one was coming out, after this one came out, everyone was like, oh my God, what is Razer going to do? But I was testing the Death Adder V4 Pro, and the Death Adder V4 Pro had clicks that were faster sometimes than this. So I was thinking, you know, if they just put those clicks on the V4 Pro, it'll be a good upgrade, because it's still 20 milliseconds faster than the V3 Pro. But not only did they do that, they innovated the sensor, and they improved the shape, which I'll get to more in the next video, because this one's gotten too long. You know, I kind of give you my discursive thoughts here. It's not entirely organized, but you kind of get like the spirit. And, you know, it sounds strange to say, but sometimes when you have people who use mice for a long time, different mice, and they've tested them, they've gone through 40. You know, I have a lot of mice. I'll show you the whole collection soon. But sometimes, you know, it's like when you go talk to someone who has a car, they're not going to tell you every little spec and try to sell you something. They're just going to tell you, hey, when I drive this car, I feel like the steering is off. And I've driven like 30 cars and something is off here. That's how I kind of feel about this. Like, you know, they're both Corvettes or Ferraris or Lamborghinis, right? But this feels more like a Ferrari, not like I've driven one. I'm going by brand and reputation, but this feels like more of like a Ferrari, and this feels more like a Lamborghini to me. And I say that because, you know, Lamborghinis, they're very standardized and very robust, high quality control. Ferraris, you know, I think there's more of them in different types. So the whole point of my analogy, though, really, not to like deviate too far off, is that if I'm talking to someone as someone who's used a ton of mice, and this person can only buy one mouse and they want to buy a premium mouse, I would only recommend this mouse to them if they like the Superlight over this one. If they like the Superlight 2 shape, because it's the exact same shape. But even then, I would be reluctant, because I know from reading the reviews on Reddit and other places that even Superlight 2 users have a lot of issues with the weight and other things about this mouse. But if you could buy both, go ahead, because, you know, this is a little piece of history. I do feel like this innovation is going to be popular, but I don't think it's going to replace clicks like this, just because, you know, I've done objective tests on my subjective experience, if that makes sense. And I'm getting 20 milliseconds better on this. And I'm even doing better on the OP1K than I am in this. So hell if I know, but that's kind of where I'm going to leave it. You decide what you want. If you have any more questions, let me know. I'm going to do a black versus white video next. Black Viper V3 Pro versus white Viper V4. Black Viper V4 Pro versus white Viper V4 Pro. I'll do another video down the line with these two as I do some more testing and playing and I'll make that my final review, but call this like my 1 month first impressions and my current recommendations. So that being said, I'm going to stop the video, and I really wish you the best. I wish that you experience peace, happiness, and joy amongst your family and create abundance in your life, and that you're safe and happy. And I hope that I've provided some value to you in this video. Once again, I'm your local resident Silverback Steve, and this is Pink Ape signing off.